Hello.
Hello, welcome to
Welcome. We always have the best intros here on this podcast.
We're like a sitcom, like, introduction to, like, how they're, like, super
Yeah.
whimsical.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Oh, I'm Jamie.
I'm Kylie. Don't click away. I promise this is a good podcast. Stay.
It's a good one this week, I have to admit. I didn't know about this one.
What are you doing? Or are you not going to tell me
It's a disaster.
yet? Which one?
I have never heard of this one before.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. It is the Bhopal gas leak.
Oh, wow. Never heard of that either.
Yeah.
You don't hear about many gas leaks, I feel like.
No, this one was, like, fucked up, though.
Yikes.
I didn't know. It was before Chernobyl.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. I keep thinking Chernobyl was in the 60s. It was not.
When is that again?
In 1986.
80s? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would have guessed the 70s. I would have been wrong, too.
I don't know why every single time I'm so convinced it's in the 60s, and then I get proven wrong every single time. So,
all right.
I'm terrible with dates when it comes to it, because I never know when St. Patrick's Day is. You never know when
Easter is.
Easter is, but I'm just terrible with dates in general, and it's just really hard to know.
I think this is the episode right before Easter, if I look at this. Yeah, because we have 3 episodes before this.
Mm-hmm.
No, 4.
3. 4? 4. 3.
We have 3 from last week, 2 from this week. So 1, 2, 3. Oh, okay, so I don't even know when Easter is. I can't even guess, but I think we're getting close.
It has to be on a Sunday.
I know that. I thought it was the 21st, but now the 24th is a Sunday, so maybe it's that day.
Oh.
Anyway, if it's Easter,
I'll just get a text from my mom saying, "Hey, are you coming over for Easter Sunday?" And I'll be like, "Okay."
I probably won't even realize it's Easter. All right. Anyway,
we had this last week.
I know we're talking about Easter again. How does this keep happening? All right. Anyway, we're going to talk about a gas leak today, guys. So
Yay.
Buckle up.
So on this week's episode, we are going to be discussing a disaster that I personally have never heard of before.
Yeah, me neither.
I was completely blindsided. But when reading of its aftermath, decided that it needed to be shared. This disaster impacted many and killed thousands in just the first couple weeks.
Yikes.
Due to the negligence of deadly chemicals and irresponsible precautions that would lead to such despair, we are now remembering a disaster that is long-lasting, just like Chernobyl. This week we are discussing the 1984 Bhopal gas leak disaster, so 2 years before Chernobyl.
Dang.
So the 80s were just a time of, let's just destroy people's lives with nuclear waste.
Basically.
So.
Good old 80s.
The 80s were a time. I was not in them, but I heard. The sources for this week I decided to use were first from a book called History's Worst Disasters and the Stories Behind Them by Eric Chalene. I also used another source for this week it was more of a review paper. It was called the Bhopal Disaster and Its Aftermath by Edward Broughton. I wrote down the name for it, but when I printed it, it just came up with like a bunch of random letters and numbers. I don't know what happened.
It was like the code, the coding.
But this book that I got for the History's Worst Disasters, it has some really good ones in here that I'm going to use, because the earthquake that I covered, the Shinji one, is in here, and
nice.
Then there's like a bunch of just other random ones that I definitely want to cover at some point, but it's really good. And I got it for like $2.
Nice! Can't go wrong. Where'd you get it from?
The library. So
okay.
They were having a book sale, because they do like an annual, like they do like a fall and a spring like book sale. Mm-hmm. Like on Saturdays they will do where hardbacks are like $2.75 and like
Soft cover. Wait.
Hardcover is like $1 or $2, and then paperback is like $1.
I was thinking of like hard shell, soft shell tacos.
But I got a bunch of books. But then on like a Sunday, they'll have like a $5 book sale.
Oh,
so,
cool.
Or like a $5 bag of books. So
where you fill it?
You just fill the bag, and
Nice.
whatever books that you get is $5.
Wow.
Yeah, I got a lot the first time that we did that, but this one I just like so happened to stumble upon it, and I was like, I'm gonna grab that. So this week I was just like, I don't know if I wanted to cover a person or if I wanted to cover something. So I was like going through my library and I found this book and I was like, oh, maybe I'll do like another disaster. And then I found this one and I was like, wait, what? I was like, what is this? So I like did it just like an overall search and I was like, what the fuck? There's a movie on this too, I guess.
Oh,
yeah.
dang.
So I was gonna write the name of it and I forgot. So just look up the Bhopal disaster, the 1984 Bhopal disaster movie, and it'll just come up.
Wow.
But
interesting.
I just don't really like watching movies like this because they always just like over dramatize them.
Right.
But like this whole situation is just a shit show of just blame, like who to put the blame on. And I feel like Chernobyl was like the same, but like in this specific one, it's just like, you know you were wrong, but you're still trying to blame other people for it.
Right.
It's like you're the one who, like, there was multiple parties who done dirty in this, but like no one wanted to take responsibility, which is so devastating because then people are still being affected by this today. Because this was in 1984 and people are having lasting health defects and they're getting cancer from it.
Oh, wow.
So it's just...
So it's still kind of current.
Yeah, it's going to be current until that last person is dead.
Yeah.
So, I just...
All right.
These get me worked up.
Hair flip.
Now, to better understand this disaster, let's get to where this plant is. So, let's get started. Bhopal is a city in the country of India, but more prominently in the state of Madhya Pradesh. This area includes 2 main lakes and the Vanavihar National Park. I want to go to like every national park ever, but like this national park, like you have to be cautious because there's lions, tigers,
Oh my
bears.
God.
Oh my! I don't think there's bears.
Damn, imagine that.
There's like leopards in it. Like it's a very dangerous national park.
Wow.
You gotta be careful when you're going to these parts of Asia and you're going into these parks. Like for us, it's like grizzly bears, mountain lions.
Right. This is like on a new level.
This is on a new level because
Jesus.
these are predator animals. Like you will never know when they're coming for you.
Dang.
Same with like mountain lions, but like a freaking tiger is like a whole new thing.
Oh, for sure.
But that's pretty cool that like this area has it though, has the national park, so it puts them on a map.
Yeah.
Just for explorers.
That is cool.
Which is really nice. So, what makes this city more iconic, too, in our story today is that it's on the list of India's greenest cities now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic for what happens, but whatever.
That is very interesting.
So now that we know a little bit more about the city, there is much to know on what led to the gas leak. If you paid attention in history class, you probably remember learning about the Industrial Revolution and the shift in wages and new machinery that it caused. But you have to remember that this this Industrial Revolution was just iconic. But it was also revolutionary. Like, it put a whole new way of life for everybody, for just people, for working class, of course it brought child labor into them not getting paid fair, but it also brought into a new way of life, and this caused a lot of pollution.
Oh, fun. Gotta love it.
Oh, that's my place. I need to put more spacing in between these.
I'm still shocked that you're using a computer.
I know.
Jamie's done using her notebook.
Sorry. I'm not done.
I'm not done.
Now, we have this Industrial Revolution, the first one, but let's not forget that there is a second Industrial Revolution. They probably don't teach you this in school, or they're not really going to focus too much on this, but the second Industrial Revolution is probably the most dangerous out of all of them.
Ooh.
Instead of the use of factories, we are seeing discoveries and experiments on chemicals that cause destruction or be of some use. So we still see new types of factories being used and being built, utilized, but what they're using instead is far more dangerous than just making linens, newspapers. This time, they're making these nuclear chemicals and just experimenting on them to see what they could do.
Shit's risky.
It's very, very risky. It's very, very dangerous. And it's just, is it worth it when it comes to it? Because, of course, people are using these experiments to sometimes make medicines. Whereas, like, other ones are using them for harmful ways, like nuclear bombs. So it's just like, is this really worth it? I don't think it is.
Right.
So that's just my preference.
Yeah, probably not worth it at that point.
We saw this experimentation of this second revolutionary industrial revolution, sorry, during World War I. Now, in World War I, there was a huge, it was chemical warfare, because we saw this with mustard gas. Highly, highly toxic. You see it was the Austrians, just kind of like Germany, they worked so hard on their chemical manipulations and creating such, because that was their art. That was their way to fight. That was their war of fighting. And it was absolutely devastating for how many lives were lost in that, because they would just take like a bomb and just like a mustard gas bomb and throw it at like a group of soldiers, and they didn't have a proper mask to use. And a good example that just an average person might like is Wonder Woman.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the whole point of the movie, was the enemy working on the whole gas. Just like the gas, and they were trying to figure out like how to stop it, because it was going to be absolutely devastating.
Right.
Because they were not only using it on soldiers now, they were using it on innocent bystanders and civilians, which is really unfortunate. Let's also not forget Chernobyl with this nuclear plant explosion and how that is still affecting land to this day at the high levels of radiation. So Chernobyl is another example after this incident of just how dangerous the second industrial revolution is. Because they get greedy, and then they get careless, and then shit like this happens to a point where you can't even do it. I saw on the news that Russia was like trying to take Chernobyl, and I kind of laughed, because I was like, why? I'm like, you can't even get that far in there without it being highly, highly toxic.
That's very interesting.
I don't know if they want to try and use some of it. I don't know what Putin's thinking, but
who knows, dude?
I just kind of laughed. I was like, what's the point? Is it just like to say that you did it?
Yeah.
Like,
probably.
I don't know.
Just to be like, yeah, we're going to do that. We're powerful. It's like, okay.
From the experiences of World War I, you would think taking the precautions and being careful with chemicals that would potentially harm one or the environment would be the decision. But in 1984, they had not learned, and it resulted called the destruction we all wanted to learn from. Moving forward into this week's discussion, let's introduce the company of the hour, Union Carbide Corporation. This corporation and their plant was opened in Bhopal in 1969 when India initiated that they wanted to encourage foreign industries into their country. So they kind of kept before they were just, India decided like, let's introduce like new companies and industries to come in so we can we can start spreading our wings outside of our country. Like, let's start looking at other foreign places that they can help us out or just like help build our economy. And they looked at the UCC and was like, this is pretty cool. Opening this plant, the UCC primarily used their plant to manufacture a pesticide that Asia uses that is called Sevin. The Indian government has such a strong relationship with the UCC that their stake into the company was 22%.
Wow.
They had high hopes for this. Because, of course, like, if you really think of, like, India, like, they do have a lot of farming. Like, it's a lot of farmland. So using this pesticide to, like, put, like, their crops in, like, top condition, you got to use some sort of chemical. And so putting this plant in the chemical was, like, the best place to do it.
Of course.
This plant was only supposed to be used for the manufacturing of Sevin and to transport the chemicals that go into it in small quantities, but this did not occur. Like every country that has capitalist roots tied to it, there is always going to be a competitor that will lead one to do the unthinkable. What was supposed to be a safe environment in the middle of the city eventually started to become more hazardous. The first mistake that they made was putting this plant in the middle of the city.
Yeah, why would you do that? In the middle?
Yeah.
Bruh.
It was stupid. It was right by a bunch of, like, urban housing. It was pretty close to the lakes. Like, it was a terrible place to be. Yeah.
That is the first mistake.
That was the first mistake. By 1984, the plant was failing. So this plant was not open for very long. It was open for less than 20 years.
Oh, dang.
Yeah, it was not doing good. With there being a crop failure going on and leading to famine for the Indian people, Sevin was no longer needed to keep those non-existent crops in top condition.
Oh, jeez.
They didn't need it. And so they're just like, this has to go. We can't afford it. Their economy could no longer afford it. This worried the UCC, and before long, they were being told to pack their bags and prepare for the plant to be sold. So they had maybe, 18 years, 17 years, 16 years, I don't know, of having this open. And then just with having crop failure, there's really nothing that you can do about that. Like, it's gonna happen eventually. And relying so heavy on, like, pesticide, like, that, it wasn't gonna last. No. Just because the plant was no longer prepping the pesticides does not mean that the chemicals were not brewing in the plant. So it was still there. It was not empty. So it was still open, but they weren't really making any more of it. They kind of just were dealing with what they had.
Yeah.
But they did not do a good job about that. What makes this situation even more face-palming and upsetting is the state that the plant was in. For plants that hold any chemical waste or something that can cause pollution, any toxic waste, toxic chemicals, whatever, there are always safety precautions on everything when it comes to it. From the plant employees wearing the proper safety gear to how updated the equipment was that holds all of it, how they keep an eye on everything, how their staff is trained, that everything has to be in top condition.
Yeah.
It has to be important.
Makes
the
sense.
problem in this case is that the equipment was not up to date. It was falling apart. It was rusty. They didn't have anybody come in to inspect it.
Yeah.
They kind of just waved it off. They're
God.
no, it's fine. The shady part of this, too, is that the government knew about how the equipment was in disrepair, but because the UCC was a huge economic contributor for their city, they let it slide.
Oh, wow.
They kind of just were like, it's okay.
Oh, my God.
Because they didn't want to fork out the money to pay for that stuff. But it's like, that's how you run a business.
Right.
Especially with something this dangerous.
You can't just mess around.
No, you can't, because that can cause serious trouble. But they hadn't really seen anything to fear such. They were just kind of like, whatever. They they didn't know the consequences that would come from it, or they didn't want to care to know.
Yeah, that's probably more like it.
Yeah, they kind of just ignored it, and the government is in fault here too for not pressuring them to make sure that their equipment was up to date, to make sure that nothing was rusted or broken, or having the proper employees to make sure they knew what the fuck they were doing.
Yeah.
Because these employees, they were being hired, but they didn't know what they were doing. They kind of just like threw them into the job. But it's like, if you're having someone work these jobs, they should know what these chemicals are, what side effects they have, what happens to them. But no.
Yeah, you should probably know a little bit about it.
And that's like a problem too with having a foreign industry come in, is that there's a lot of them are shady. Like this one is shady. But because they were getting a lot of money out of this pesticide. Yeah. The Bhopal government. And so they were just like, we're just going to let it slide.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it's absolutely devastating. Letting it slide would become a main contributor to the disaster. So let's get into it. On December 2nd, 1984 at 11 p.m., an operator at the plant was making his rounds around the plant and noticed in one of the tanks a leak of methyl isocyanate, also known as MIC.
I thought you were going to say also known as meth. I was like, no, that's not the same. Okay, sorry.
MIC started to be introduced into the plant in 1979 as a manufacturing chemical. This chemical is colorless. It is an inflammable liquid that, believe it or not, reacts terribly to water.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Terrible. MIC before this night was not the first time that this chemical was causing troubles for the plant. In years prior, the chemical had been dangerous as people who were staffed were hospitalized from the exposures to the chemicals because of poor dress wear that was not provided.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so people were getting burns, they were getting rashes, they were getting ill. So they were being hospitalized for this, and everything was kept on like the hush hush. And this was going on from like 81, 82, 83, 84, like leading up to it. So many people were being hospitalized for this because it just wasn't being taken care of properly.
Wow.
And nobody had the proper gear to prevent it, because it's pretty much like an acid of a sense that's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
So it was pretty bad. Let's also not forget that the staffing in general was way lower than it should have been, so the company could save money. So their staffing was like half the size, because they wanted to give them better salaries, but the real fact is that they wanted to take more money.
Yeah, it's because that doesn't sound.
And it's just, people don't realize is that if you're going to open an industry like this, you have to make sure everything is in order, and that includes having a full ass staff. Because if you're having half staff, they're not going to know what they're doing. They're going to feel very stressed out, and just like they're going to have to be dealing with more on hand. It's not a good idea to cut your staff in half just so you can make an extra buck.
No, yeah.
It's not worth it in the long run.
Absolutely not.
And it didn't help too that the training was really bad. Like their training, they didn't teach them anything. Like they didn't know what this chemical was, what it could do. Because the operator who came by was probably like, oh, there's a leak going on. Like, this is pretty bad. We better get it fixed. But he didn't know the crisis of it. He didn't know how bad it could get with like, oh, what is actually going on? Like, how is it going to affect? What's the gas in there? Yeah. He didn't know. He didn't know. Dang. The biggest problem with all of this is that the gas flare safety system was down, and it had been for 3 months. So pretty much anything that like a safety system that pretty much tells you this shit is not right. Like it would give an alarm, be like, this shit ain't right, fix it. It was broken.
Of course.
And it was down. Yeah. So nobody could have like any idea of just of this being a problem. Like, oh, there's something like internal going on.
Yeah.
There was no like internal warning of being like, hey, something is not right with the tank. These temperatures are not looking right. You got to do something. Like, it was broken, and they didn't want to fix it. So it's just like that was on their fault. It was evident that an incident like this was bound to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We all knew it was going to.
Yeah, for sure.
Going back to the night of December 2nd, the problem that would cause this leak would be the faulty valve that let 1 ton of water enter into the tank of MIC, which, as remember, is a terrible idea. You don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
There was already 40 tons of MIC in this tank. And to make matters worse, the coolant that would help keep the temperature down had been drained from the tank.
Oh my god.
To another part of the plant, leaving the water and gas to start mixing without trying to keep the temperature down. Yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah. Due to the water and gas combining with one another, the pressure and the heat started to rise rapidly into the tank. So it was like,
it's stirring.
It's coming all together. And it was like, oh, I can't handle it. The average temperature for the MIC gas just alone was 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 4.5 degrees Celsius. I actually looked it up this time.
Yay!
But due to the water entering into the tank, the temperature rose significantly. Can you guess how high it was?
So it was 40 at first.
Mm-hmm.
100. They get higher. 150. Oh god, what was it?
392 degrees Fahrenheit.
Oh,
so 200
god!
degrees Celsius. Way higher than it should have been.
It's like your oven.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah. And that is just, that's dangerous levels. That's over at least 10 times. Almost.
I was not expecting it to be that high.
Yeah.
My god.
Very high. At 1 a.m., the valve finally gave way, and with a rumble around the plant, 33 tons of gas erupted into the night air. So it just went poof.
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, and it just formed this big ass cloud of gas, of toxic gas.
Damn.
Yeah. Absolutely terrifying to be anybody who lived in that area.
Yeah, no.
Even if you lived like across the city, like you could probably still hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Terrifying. It's not certain entirely what mixture was exposed into the air, but it is assumed that the chemicals that were exposed were phosgene, hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide, hydrogen chloride, and carbon dioxide. All of these are highly toxic, dangerous chemicals that you do not want to take in. Because cyanide is what you use to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just that alone, and then you add all this on top of it?
Yeah, all of this else. Like,
damn.
We breathe out carbon dioxide, but you don't want to take that in.
Right.
No, we don't want to intake that because that's how you die.
Yeah.
So, this whole, it was literally a gas cloud of toxic fumes that were going to kill you if you were outside during this first exposure. So, no matter what, like, it's not even estimated how many people died.
Oh my god.
Yeah. They can't get, like, a rough estimation. Oh, God. What the fuck? Scared the shit out of me.
He's just riding in the backyard. I love that.
Oh, my God. Of course he would.
Got a new bike. It
scared the shit out of me.
I just, like, see this bike coming to the window, and I was like, is he gonna run into the window?
I think he's happy.
It's like Christmas morning.
Honestly. Oh my god.
Sorry to get off track, but
it scared me. God. Okay. In the first hours, any animal or person who is outside of their home in the city were starting to drop like flies.
Oh.
Yeah. Their corpses started to pile onto the street. Imagine the fear of looking out your window in the morning and seeing dead animals and people on the sidewalk, on your patio, and even near your home.
God, that'd be terrifying.
Absolutely terrifying. It is estimated that in this first blow and exposure of the gas cloud, there were 3,800 people who died immediately.
Oof.
But still to this day, it is uncertain to the lives lost due to this disaster. Like, we have an estimation
around 4,000.
Yeah. But, like, there's more. There's going to be more that I'll add into it. But, like, in the first drop, it was, like, over 3,800.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. The cloud lingered in this area for several days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it wasn't until, like, probably, like, the 5th or the 7th that it started to clear out. So everybody was terrified, and they couldn't leave their homes. They were just like, I don't know what to do. Or they had to, like, freaking put as much gear on that they could to, like, go to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
They just couldn't. If anybody who was exposed, like, they had to go to the hospital, but they were just like, well, if we walk through this cloud, are we gonna die?
Right.
So it's just the estimating of, like, what you wanted to do. Absolutely devastating.
Wow.
It was a heavy and low cloud of, excuse me, oh my God, a fog gas that, if exposed for just a few minutes, would result in death in, like, the first couple days. So,
I don't doubt that with all those chemicals.
Exactly. What was really unfortunate was that many of those exposed to this gas were the people who lived right near the plants, who also lived in the slum colonies.
Mm.
So if you don't know what a slum is, it's kind of like where the poverty live.
Mm-hmm.
It's very unfortunate, and that's probably why they put the plant there. Because they were like, if something happens...
At least it's them.
Yeah, which is... Never do that.
No.
Hospitals became immediately overcrowded, with people rushing family members and themselves in for the side effects that were due to the gas. The first effects of being exposed to the gas were coughing, eye irritation, vomiting, and starting to suffocate. So a lot of just like being exposed to any sort of just like gas.
Mm-hmm.
What would lead to death would be the choking, circulatory collapse, and fluid being in the lungs due to the harsh chemicals. Like, your body would just shut down from it. The death rate started to rise, and the number went from 3,800 all the way up to 8,000.
Wow.
And it just kept counting. It, like, tripled in the next month. And it kept getting higher and higher.
Dang.
This had become one of the worst plant malfunction disasters in the world. Let's not forget, this took 2 years before Chernobyl, and this was still worse than how many people died from Chernobyl.
And it's less known of.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Mm-hmm. From the government, it was stated that 500,000 people were exposed to this gas.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Within the next couple of weeks, another 8,000 plus were dead, and that number just kept increasing. And of course, there's still probably people that we don't know of. So there's never going to be a solid like estimate of just who died.
There's a lot of bodies that probably weren't discovered too.
Unfortunately. I would like to say that the UCC would take full responsibility for this disaster, but that is quite the opposite of what they did. Instead, the UCC blamed everybody else, including the government, any extremist group, and petty employees. This did not fly with anybody. They were just like, how fucking dare you? Because they blamed the government. They're like, they let this slide. Like, how could they do that?
Mm-hmm.
And then they blamed any extremist party, being like, they were just being rude. They were causing trouble. They totally caused it. And then any petty employee, they're like, well, they probably did this. They probably just broke the valve and did all of this other stuff. It's like, why the fuck would they want to do that and harm the rest of the people in the city?
Right.
When it came down to it. It was your negligence.
Yeah. You can't blame it on anyone, bud.
No, it was them. It was
Damn.
I would say it was both the government and their fault.
Mm-hmm.
More their fault because they let it happen, and the government for letting it happen.
Like, you need to look more into that stuff.
Yeah.
To just put it in the middle?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, with this not flying, instead, a huge lawsuit was made against them on that the machinery should have been fixed, but they were so lazy to do so. This was like a multi-million-dollar lawsuit.
Oh my god.
That would go through. And I believe it was like an American attorney who would go through with this lawsuit. And they're like, oh shit, here we go. The government, still in hot water for this whole thing, decided that they would construct an act to provide compensation for those who were affected by the gas leak. I mean, there's nothing that they could do to like not have prevented. Like, they could have prevented this.
Yeah.
But it's like they did such a shitty thing by letting it slide, but at least their government is doing something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you're kind of just like, I'm mad at you for what you did, but it's like, at least you're doing something, because the UCC was complete assholes throughout this whole thing. Like, they are completely in the fault for not taking any ownership, any responsibility, any precautions. They didn't take anything into consideration for this disaster. So that's
on them.
It's on them.
Yeah.
This act would have the UCC give $477 million to be dispersed to those involved in the leak and to take full responsibility. No one got jailed.
What?
Yeah, no one of this company got jailed.
Oh my god, they just murdered a bunch of people.
Yeah, in any other any like developed country, those people would have been jailed.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, no.
In this case, no. They pretty much were billed and were like, you eventually have to pay out all these people. Like, you're going to have to pay. And it wasn't even like that much per person. It was just, here's a settlement. You got to disperse it to these people some way. Yeah. And it was like that.
Wow.
Not enough. Instead, those who were injured with a lifelong health problem would get $455 the person, anybody affected. And those who died, like the family member who died, would get $1,128 or $2,200. My sources differed between how much a family member would get if they died. But like, what the actual fuck? That's not even a hospital trip payment.
No, that ain't gonna do shit.
No. I'm like, even in the 80s, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Well, at first I was like, it was probably a lot of money back then. And I remembered it was the 80s. And I was like, oh, hell no.
No. So, that is very upsetting. And what makes this shittier is that the people even didn't get the money right away. It took until 2003 in October for the whole amount to be dispersed out. 2003.
Wow.
And I'm sure a lot more of those people died.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
The total number of people that were awarded money were 554,895 people.
Dang.
Yeah, that's a lot of fucking people. You would think the UCC would hang their heads low and continue to pay this off throughout the years, but no. No, they did not.
Of course not.
They would continue to fight against paying some of the victims and even go to court any chance they could get.
God.
They would always make the same excuse that, well, it wasn't our fault. It was the government who let it happen. Who let it slide. And it's like,
no, that's not how that works.
No, they lost. They would lose.
Yeah, no one's going to be on their side for that.
No. Also, being the bitches that they are, they then deserted the plant, but lacked to pick up any of the toxic chemicals that were around the plant still. They just left it. They kind of just were like, deal with it. And left.
God.
Yeah. That... Ooh.
Wow.
I am upset. When I was doing my research, I was about to break my computer. I was like, how fucking dare they?
That is the worst thing I've ever heard.
Now, of course, this company with would leave a very bad taste in their mouth for the rest of the world. They would just be like, oh, hell no. We are not going to deal with these people. We are not going to deal with this situation again. We need to fix something about this.
Mm-hmm.
We're not just going to leave this be. Like, we have to have higher standards than this. We cannot just let shit like this flow.
Right.
We can't let the government just let it slide because it's in their economic favor.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be more environmental than economical in this sense. So, yeah, the countries were just like, we're going to figure something out. Now, it was also established that urban areas could no longer be located this close to, so they started to make initiatives to start making higher standards for plants, for like high toxic plants and stuff like this, like chemical plants.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, okay, we are going to start constructing like all of these new laws and policies that have to be constructed into the standards for India.
Mm-hmm.
And what you can and can't do. The government has really no say of like how these things are going to be run. It's just how it's going to be.
Wow.
So this first one was that urban areas can no longer be located this close to any plant that includes any chemical toxins. So that was like a huge one. So no more slums and near plants.
Yeah.
Which 100% agree.
Good.
It was also noted that cities that had poor water infrastructure like Bhopal did at the time could not house a plant. Bhopal at the time didn't have a system on where to properly dump waste, so they started dumping it in the lakes that lacked the water supply.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so like their lakes were their water supply and their waste supply, or like their waste dumping.
Dang.
Yeah, so they were like, okay, we can't put a plant here because they need to figure out their water infrastructure because we cannot be dumping just where they get their water from. Like, we can't do stuff like that.
Wow.
So that's probably why there's not another plant there. And they're learning from their ways of like, let's be greener.
I'm glad they learned. Jesus.
Yeah. From this disaster, we see some good that did come out of it. In 1986, an act was passed that was called the Environment Protection Act that would push India's involvement in protecting more of the environment. This act would create laws and policies and would follow country in order to prevent anything like this to happen again. And I think this really pushed it after Chernobyl because it was in 1986. Because of the Bhopal gas leak, it opened people's eyes to the danger that toxic chemicals have not only been terrible for people, but also the environment. You would think something like this would open other people's eyes to making sure to handle dangerous chemicals with care and to be smart about it. But unfortunately, Chernobyl would still happen, as well as the oil spill in the Gulf. Today, we look at the terror as a gas cloud can cause, and today there are citizens that are still living with the consequences the UCC caused because they wanted to save a few extra dollars.
Oh my God.
So yeah, cancer, any sort of lung disease is very common for people who survive these disasters.
That's horrible.
Yeah, so they're one of the many who had to deal with that, but they learned a lot from it. And I guess too, because I was reading in some of my other research for it, is that I guess they had another company come in at one point and they were like shady. They were like a Dutch company and they started dumping like toxic waste into like one of the water supplies or like near a water supply, and they're like, oh fuck no. They're like, get out of here. So they shut them down. They're like, no, we're not doing that. So like they have definitely been a lot more cautious of just like, this is what we have to do. We have to be cautious. We have to care about our environment.
Right.
That is one thing my mom has embedded into my whole life because we would celebrate Earth Day every year. And every year she's like, Happy Earth Day. And I'm like, Happy Earth Day.
She loves Earth Day. I love it.
Oh gosh. But it's like, it's important because it's our Earth, and
it's what we live on.
Yeah, you have to take care of it, and you have to be cautious about it. And people are just so fucking stupid, and they just are greedy.
Yeah, they are
so greedy. But
definitely.
This one, I was just like, this has to be shared.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing really a lot of people. I saw a guy do a video of it on YouTube, but I don't think it's really well known.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because, so many
And unfortunately, it might be because of the area.
I think so.
Because a lot of times we just push that area away.
Yeah.
We're like, we don't
because
need to
they're like,
know.
oh, it's India, it's just pollution central.
Right.
It's just like...
We make excuses to not educate ourselves on it, you know? It's just like...
And it's just like, those are the important areas to educate yourself on, to know why they are the way that they are. No matter the cause, even if it's like bad, good. Like, I'm a sole believer of just like, you have to share all of history.
Yeah.
You can't just share the good, the bad. You have to share the ugly. Mm-hmm. It's in a sense of just like, you have to take everything.
Right.
That's what history is. It's not just victors.
Mm-hmm.
You also see, like, no one was a victor in this case.
That way we can learn from our history, you know?
Yeah, because the UCC lost out millions of dollars, which I don't think 477 was enough. Mm-mm. That was not... no money is enough. But
no.
In a sense, you should get those people to live comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
At least. And not even $500.
Yeah, that's fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you're pretty much saying that, like, oh, your parent is only worth, like, $1,500.
Yeah. That's so wrong.
Mm-hmm. So... that is this week's episode. I'm so sorry for the sadness, but I saw it, I had to share it, I got angry, and then I just started typing.
It's important that we know about this stuff.
Yes, and I do want to keep doing disasters like this. Like, I was thinking about doing Chernobyl, but I was like, that one is just like a stack itself. Yeah. Because there was a lot that went into that, like politics, just government, and everything. So that would be like a friggin' 2 or 3-parter right there. But I did a gas leak. I can't.
It's wild.
It's wild. But thank you for hanging in there. Yeah. Really appreciate it.
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. We're going to go eat some Mexican food.
Woo woo! Get a marg.
I'm so excited.
Some chips.
I am so excited for chips and dip.
I'm really tempted to just buy some queso. It sounds really good.
Oh, I love you dip.
All right, well, we'll catch you later because we're hungry. We're going to go eat. So
yes, where can you find us?
You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Not Twitter. I gave up on that shit. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, at History of the Podcast. You can email us at historyofthepodcast@gmail.com.
Yes, you can.
Jesus Christ. I just had a heart attack.
Oh my god.
All right, well, my laptop's about to die, so this is perfect ending time.
Oh god, we gotta go.
Okay, we gotta save this. Bye!
Bye.
Oh, wait, can I stop it? There we go.